Have you ever had that feeling? You know, that sinking feeling in your stomach when the world just seems to be falling apart? When all the things you thought were solid, maybe your job, the stability of the country, even your relationships, start to feel like they're cracking? Well, in this explainer, we're going to dive into the Bible, into Psalm 11, to find a roadmap for how to stand firm when everything around us feels totally shaken. And this right here, Psalm 11, verse 7, this is our anchor. This is the incredible conclusion the psalmist comes to after facing just immense pressure. It's really the core idea we're going to unpack, the belief that God's own righteous character is the one truly unshakable foundation we can stand on.
And this leads us to the central, the gut punch question of the whole psalm. And this isn't some theoretical exercise. It is intensely practical. When the systems you count on, the security you thought you had, when the very sense of order in the world just seems to vanish, what do you actually do?
So the psalmist doesn't just leave us hanging with that scary question. It lays out this dramatic choice between two totally different ways to react to the chaos. This is the real conflict we're going to get into, the path of faith versus the path of fear.
To really get this choice, you got to put yourself in the psalmist David's shoes for a second. Okay, so he is in some serious trouble. And the people around him, maybe even his closest friends, they're basically telling him it's hopeless. Their advice? Just run. Flee. Save yourself. It's the logical, pragmatic, and, well, fearful response when the odds are stacked against you.
So this sets up two completely opposite paths, doesn't it? On one hand, you've got the path of fear. Just panic, give up, and assume the worst is going to happen. But David, he chooses the other path, the response of faith. He decides to take refuge in the Lord, to stand his ground, and to put his trust not in what he can see, but in the unchanging character of God himself.
So you have to ask, right? Why? Why did David choose faith? What gave him that kind of radical confidence? Well, it's built on two incredibly powerful truths, two pillars, if you will. And the first pillar is this: God is on his throne.
David's logic here is actually pretty simple, but it's so powerful. He refuses to run because his ultimate trust isn't in earthly things, because they can obviously be destroyed. No, his trust is in the Lord. And where is the Lord? He is sovereign. He is seated on his heavenly throne, and that means he is reigning in complete and total control. Nothing, and I mean nothing, escapes his notice.
And this is why it matters so much. Understanding God's sovereignty is a direct answer to our fear. Fear just screams at us that everything is out of control, right? But faith, rooted in this truth, it calmly replies that God has never lost control, not for a second. It lets us anchor our confidence in who God is, eternal, all-powerful, unshakable, instead of in the chaotic circumstances we see all around us. But it's not just that God is in control. That's only half the picture. The second pillar holding up David's confidence is all about God's character. See, he isn't some distant, neutral power up in the sky. He is personally and passionately invested in what is right. I mean, the psalm makes it crystal clear that God is not just a passive observer. He's an active participant, and he makes moral distinctions, he tests everyone, he actively stands against evil, and most importantly, his very nature is righteous. He doesn't just put up with righteousness, he loves it. He loves right actions that come from a right heart.
And this is a total game changer. Because if God is righteous, then our efforts to live with integrity, to do the right thing, they are never wasted, even when the world doesn't notice or even mocks it. It means our choices have eternal significance because they are seen and they are valued by a God who promises his presence to those who walk in his ways.
Okay, so we've got these two massive pillars, God's sovereignty and God's righteousness. But how do we actually build our lives on them? How does all this theology turn into action when we feel the ground shaking beneath our feet? All right, first, flowing from God's sovereignty, we've got these three steps. It all starts with a choice, an active, conscious decision to trust instead of giving in to panic. Then it's about the discipline of remembering, preaching to yourself the truth that God is still on his throne, no matter what it looks like. And finally, we consciously anchor our hope, our confidence in him, not our situation. And second, based on God's righteousness, our actions suddenly get a whole new level of meaning. We can commit to doing what is right even when it's hard or unpopular because we trust that God sees and values our obedience. And this is what empowers us to live not just for today, but with this great hope and promise of walking in close fellowship with him.
So when you put it all together, God's absolute, sovereign control and his deeply righteous character, you get the powerful two-word summary of Psalm 11's message for us in a crisis. It's not run fast or hide well. It's a command that's rooted in deep confidence. Stand firm.
At the end of the day, this isn't just about analyzing an old text. It's a direct challenge for us, right here, right now. So let's end with this thought. Knowing that God is on his throne and that he loves righteousness, where in your life are you being called to stand firm and to live uprightly, especially when everything inside of you just wants to turn and run?